Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. What do you have to do to stand up for your fellow Jews that are evil? Do you know any fellow Jews that are the word evil is a hard word. It's a very difficult word. But if you have word, yeah, maybe that's a better word, Mordechai. That if you know Jews that are, evil is a very difficult word to use.
Way off the
that are lost. Imagine you have Jews that are voting for a pro-Hamas candidate. Can you imagine that there's such a thing? Imagine there was an election and you had a Jew that was voting for a pro-Hamas candidate. What should you do with such people? Right? What should you do? A Mornis Kaddish? God forbid, right? So it's a very difficult situation. It's a very difficult circumstance. Here in America, we're struggling today with a circumstance where there's an election today. And this election today could lead to 1 million Jewish New Yorkers moving to Palm Beach Gardens. What are we going to do?
Or Texas. We're going to vote for McDonald's.
We're going to need a bigger table, guys. I mean, seriously, what are we going to do?
We're going to invest in the company.
So this is the problem. Look, everything's in the hands of Hashem. It's all Leiv Malachim Yad Hashem. The hearts of kings are in the hands of Hashem. But there's a very beautiful precedent that comes up in the Torah portion this week where Abraham, the first Jew, stands up for the wicked Jews. I turn your attention to page 105 in the blue Chumash, where the Parsha actually begins with the beautiful encounter of Abraham inviting the guests. It's on the third day of his bris. He's recovering, yet he is committed to hospitality. He wants to make sure that he welcomes the guests, and Hashem sends him 3 angels. These 3 angels each have a different mission. One is there to heal Abraham from his bris. Another one is there to inform him of the birth of Isaac at 99 years old. That's pretty cool. Message. And the third one was coming to destroy the city of Sodom and the other cities, the 4 cities around them. So after the encounter of God, of the angels letting them know about the birth of their child in a year from now, and Sarah laughs, right? What happens then is here. If you go to page 103 at the very bottom. No, sorry, it's 102 in the middle of the page, actually. Sorry, it's 105. Forget it. It's page 105. Yeah, okay. It's just English doesn't always match the Hebrew. God's plan to destroy it. So yeah, it's jet lag. God's plan to destroy the cities of the plain. God said, "Should I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do to the inhabitants of the cities of the plain? They are part of the plan of the land that I promised him. So I should inform him of my plans. Furthermore, I've made him their father. Should I destroy the children without telling the father? How can I keep my plans secret from him, seeing that I love Abraham so much that I promised him that he will surely become a great and mighty nation, and through him all the nations of the world will be blessed? I have promised him these blessings, for I cherish him, and I cherish him because he instructs his children and his household after him to keep God's ways by acting with righteousness and justice, so they will earn my blessings." In fact, when he instructs them to follow my teachings, he adds explicitly, so God will be able to bring about for Abraham everything he said concerning him. Just stop there for a moment and reflect on the fact why God is talking to himself, right? And God is saying, why do I love Abraham so much?
Soliloquy.
Because isn't a soliloquy a song?
No,
it's words.
Speech to
yourself. Soliloquy, good. So what does it mean here that God loves Abraham? Why does he love Abraham? Because he teaches his kids. That's why. Think about that for a moment. And I want you to reflect for a moment about what values you pass on to your kids. Don't be intimidated by your children. Right. Don't be intimidated by your daughter-in-law, folks. Don't be afraid, right? You have the right to be able to infuse values in your grandchildren. Don't be afraid. You're allowed to do this, right? You are the grandparent, right? You're not brainwashing them by teaching them values, right? This is what makes us Jewish, right? The Egyptians built pyramids, and the Babylonians built ziggurats, and the Incas built temples, right? And they're all in museums behind glass cases. Today, what the Jews invested in was not in buildings, but in schools. And that's why we're alive and well to tell the story, right? It's only because we told the story. We can't be the last generation. We've got to make sure that we pass these values on to our children. This is the essential factor that is what caused Abraham to be chosen by God. Oh, Rochelle from Dubai. Nice to see you. Welcome. Good. So, as he said he would, God said to Abraham, because the outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah has become great and their sin is very grave. So God is telling Abraham, listen, Sodom and Gomorrah is really bad cities. I will descend as I did before the dispersion. Remember the dispersion? That was the last 2 weeks ago, where the people gathered together in order to fight against God. They built the Tower of Babylon.
Yeah.
In order to demonstrate, one day when we do a short trip to Iraq, I really want to go visit that Tower of Babylon, the remnants. I want to see, what we can find over there. In order to demonstrate that a judge should not render a verdict until first carefully examining the evidence and see if their deeds have matched the outcry that has come before me. If they are indeed as depraved as the outcry that I've heard against them misdeeds would indicate, and they have not yet repented, then I will annihilate them. If not, then I will know what less severe punishment to impose upon them. The story goes, Rashi brings us a story that what happened was that Lot had a daughter. Lot was the nephew of Abraham. Lot had a daughter who, like her uncle Abraham, was very charitable and kind. So she wanted to be kind to a poor person that was coming by the town. Now, there were ordinances in Sodom and Gomorrah that were prohibiting people from inviting guests. It was like a modern day HOA, right? Where you weren't allowed to have you're not allowed to have certain guests under a certain age. Over 55 community, your guests can't be under a certain age, right? God forbid, it's not an HOA. I'm just joking. But what they had ordinances that you weren't allowed to invite guests, right? So what she did was that she surreptitiously figured out a way how she was able to feed a poor person. What she did was that she put certain food behind the rock outside the city, and the poor person came and he found the food. What they did was, in order to punish her, is that they stripped her naked, they covered her body with honey, and this attracted the bees. Apparently, her writhing in agony or fear would provoke the bees, and they would sting her, and she died a very, very slow death of suffering from bee stings. Right. So this is what the reference Rashi says when it says, if it's true that her cry is in fact as match the outcry that has come before me. That's what we just read in the verse, right? But Abraham knew full well that the inhabitants of the cities of the plain were corrupt. So you got here Abraham facing a situation where you got not even Jews. You're talking about people that are human beings that are evil. I mean, they're anti-charity. They are anti-kindness, right? This is their qualities. These are their traits. And what's Abraham going to do when God tells them, I'm about to destroy them? The men he was escorting turned from the place to which Abraham had accompanied them and headed towards Sodom, while Abraham was still standing before God, listening to his words. Abraham understood that those men were on the way to destroy Sodom. He understood that these were angels. They were on the way to destroy Sodom. So what is he supposed to do? How do you react to such a circumstance? And here comes a very interesting word. I want you to see the word in the original Hebrew. It's the second last line on page 104. I just want you to see this very interesting word. Page 104, second last line in the Hebrew, first word, Vayigash Avraham Vayomar. And Abraham came forward and he spoke. This word Vayigash is a very unusual word when you Abraham was already standing with God in the previous verse, right? Yeah. It says he was Avraham Odenu Omed Lifnei Hashem, and Avraham was still standing before God. So what does it mean? And he approached and he came forward to speak to God. What does that word mean? This word comes up elsewhere in Torah. Remember when Benjamin was taken hostage by his brother Joseph, and he was framed for having stolen the goblet of Joseph. So Joseph says, don't worry, you guys are free to go. I'm just going to keep this one who's the thief, and we're done. This was the ultimate test of if they had repented or not. And instead, the parsha begins, Vayigash Elav Yehuda, and Judah steps forward to approach him. There, how does Judah approach him? What was the emotion contained within that word? Vayigash is not just, by the way, you can't take the kid. That's not the approach. The word Vayigash means, and he approached with three ways. He approached with, Rashi says, that he was preparing for war, he was preparing for appeasement, and he was preparing for prayer. This is a very well strategized, well fortified, and well calculated strategy. Right? In other words, he's coming from three approaches: military, diplomacy, and spiritual, right? Prayer. So he's coming with those three approaches. That's what Judah does, right? In order to stand up to Joseph. He's like, listen, this is not happening. The kid is not staying here, which is exactly what Joseph wanted to see. He wanted to see that the brothers who had betrayed him had repented and were willing to stand up for him. So here, when the word comes up, it's quite shocking. I mean, look, we haven't reached that portion of Vayigash yet in the Torah. It comes up later. But why would this word be inserted right here? Vayigash. Why is Abraham Vayigash to Hashem So let's read it in English. He figuratively came forward, i.e. prepared himself emotionally to confront God, to argue sternly with him, to appease him, and to pray to him, right? You got military, diplomacy, and spiritual. Seeing that there was very little time left, he began by arguing with God, and he said, would you in your anger obliterate the righteous along with the wicked? And here Abraham proceeds to negotiate. He wants to know if there's 50 righteous people in the cities, 10 for each city, then there's a quorum, it's enough to save the whole city, right? This, by the way, is a little intense for us to process. That God is unleashing his vengeance upon a city. Where else do we see this idea come up in Torah? Have you ever seen such a precedent in Torah where God wipes out an entire city for corruption?
That entire world.
The whole world.
That's interesting. That's an interesting precedent, right? The wiping out of humanity in the days of Noah, correct? Now, by the way, in that situation, which is the precedent of this case, how many righteous people were there? There was Noah and his wife, 3 sons, and 3 daughters-in-law. That's 8. That's it. So there wasn't even a minion, which is why when Abraham realizes he gets down to 10, and he says not even one city has a minion, as a quorum, he realizes we can't do this anymore, so he's done. And he walks away, and God proceeds to wipe them out. But that's where we learn that 10 is necessary. But where else we see it also is in the law of the Ir Hanidachat, the city of corruption, the city of idolatry. When there's a city in Israel which is fully steeped in idolatry, there's different laws associated with it, then you've got to burn down the whole city with its inhabitants inside. Right? It's a very, very traumatic experience. The Talmud says it never actually happened in the history of the world. However, it is a concept that God recognizes, that when people descend to the fullness of measure of corruption, then that city needs to be wiped out. So here Abraham approaches these evil city, and he's standing up for them. He's fighting for them. He's literally standing up to God. Why would he do this? Think about that for a moment. Why would he do this? They're not even Jewish people. These are non-Jews that are wicked and corrupt. Not only corrupt against God, they're corrupt against each other.
So they're non-monotheists.
They're non-monotheists. Yeah, they're not observing the 7 laws of Noah, which at that time were obligatory, right? Because Noah had already lived 10 generations prior. After the destruction of the world, there were 7 laws that were instituted for all of humanity, right?
So maybe he was the first humanitarian.
He was the first humanitarian. The first humanitarian. By the way, how does Noah react when God said he's going to destroy the world?
He builds an ark.
He starts building the ark.
builds the ark.
And he
He shrugs his shoulders. I was talking to my siblings in Israel about this. On Friday night, we had a farbrengen with my siblings around the table. And I was talking to them in Jerusalem. It's a beautiful hotel, the David Citadel. It's this horseshoe-shaped hotel facing the old city. It's just a Shabbos in heaven. So there, but Wordheimer was there with us. So what happened was that we saw there was a sign as a delegation from Palm Beach Gardens in the hotel. One of the temples was there. So we went over. We had a little farbrengen with them too. So we sitting around the table with my siblings.
Right.
Some of your friends.
Yeah.
So we spoke to the whole group.
Yeah.
So what happened was that Noah, think about this. Noah builds an amazing Chabad house. Think about it. He spent 120 years building this incredible Chabad house that apparently,
Hopefully you could do it a little quicker.
Amen, a little quicker. That apparently is still around today. The remnants are still on Mount Ararat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he builds this boat, this ark, and who lives in it? He's got a bunch of animals and garbage, right? His family, fine. He's got his own family, but I mean, he can't even pull a minion in this big, giant, beautiful building, right? Meanwhile, Abraham doesn't build a building. Doesn't have a fancy shul Chabad house with a social hall and a mikvah and a commercial kitchen. There's none of that. He's got a tent. And who does Abraham have in his tent? The place is jam-packed night and day with guests. How do you explain the difference? I asked my siblings this question. What do you think?
Well, he was like a shliach because
Okay,
God wanted him.
Abraham clearly is a shliach, but Noah could have been a shliach too. Why wasn't he a shliach?
He used to sleep at the wheel. When it came to
So
the
it's my
sleep.
wife that piped up. My wife piped up and she says, "You want to know the difference between Noah and Abraham? The difference is their wives.
Of course.
We know nothing about Noah's wife. We know nothing about Noah's wife save her name. That's it. We know that her name was Na'amah. That's all the Torah tells us, and that her brother's name was Tuval Kain, and he invented metal works. That's all we know. That's all we know. Meanwhile, what does Abraham's wife do? Sarah is cooking, she is scrubbing, she is cleaning, she's preparing the 3 tongues, for the guests. She's just constantly cooking. It was such an interesting. She's finding concubine for her husband. She is busy, right? And that's what my wife was saying. You got a Chabad house where the wife is not involved. You're going to be filled like Noah with garbage and animals, right? Right? You get a wife involved in the Chabad house. You're going to be busy night and day. It's going to be rocking and rolling, right? It was a nice upbringing.
She's busy rock and rolling.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
If in the commentaries they connect the Shoresh Vayigash with Goshen.
It's not the same Shorish as Goshen. Goshen is the place where the Jewish people lived in the land of Egypt, the fat of the land, not to be confused with Goshen, New York. But it was Goshen in the land of Egypt. There, the root has a nun, gimel, shin, and nun. It's a different word entirely. It's 2 out of 3, but it's not the same thing. Could there be a spiritual Kabbalistic connection? Could there be a spiritual Kabbalistic connection? Yeah, but on a literary sense, it's not the same root. But back to the story here. So Abraham approaches these people, whereas Noah just shrugs his shoulders. So what do you want me to do about it, God? Build an ark? Okay, I'll build an ark. He doesn't stand up to God and he say, why would you kill these people? There's got to be some redeeming factor, some good qualities in them. Doesn't do any of that. Right? Doesn't do any of that. What does Noah do? He just starts building, minds his own business. Abraham stands up to God. He speaks truth to power. And what an amazing lesson, because when you think about Abraham, you know how Abraham's described in Torah? Avraham Ohavi. Avraham, my beloved. Because Abraham was a kind person. Abraham was a people person. He was kind. He was gentle. He was magnanimous. He was Ish HaChesed, the man of kindness, as opposed to a man of Gevura. People have Gevura. People are strict. People are tough. People are tight-fisted. You have people that they're just tough, right? Now, it's not a bad thing. It's a good quality if you want to be a military general or if you want to be in charge of a budget or a CFO. You want to run a company. But as a father, you want to be kind and gentle, right? So, look at, for example, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, right? Hillel and Shammai, right? So you have what happens here. You have this prospective convert. He comes to Shammai and he says, teach me the whole Torah while I stand on 1 foot. The guy sends him headfirst flying. He was holding the measuring stick. Shammai was a builder, so he was holding his measuring stick. And he shoves him out headfirst. Meanwhile, the guy goes to Hillel and he says, teach me the whole Torah while I stand on 1 foot. And Hillel says, what did he say to him? The famous answer. He says, what you don't want done to yourself, don't do unto others. This is the whole Torah. Everything else is commentary. That's a man of kindness. This is a man of magnanimity, the man of understanding. And Tanya tells us these are 2 different people with 2 different soul roots. It's very helpful, by the way, when you're able to identify the soul root of the people closest to you. Imagine if you understood that your wife was maybe, or your husband is a man of gevura, of discipline. Then what happens is that you can lower your expectations of romantic overtures, and you can learn that their love language is more about compliance, perhaps compliance, or acts of service. For example, would be somebody who's more a person of gevura, of strictness, right? Maybe they're not into the gifts that you give them as much as they're into you doing things that are meaningful to them. It's very, very helpful. What was that? Put away the dishes. Just something as simple as washing the dishes can be much more valuable to them than buying them a $10,000, $20,000 necklace. Because when you understand the root of where a person comes from, it makes a big difference. And Tanya speaks about how we all have a soul root. Every single one of us has a soul root. And when you recognize your own soul root, it helps you understand yourself. It helps you understand how you will find meaning in your life. By the way, we have a beautiful class today at 4 p.m. on the meaning of life. And it helps you understand who you are, where you're coming from, and where you're going. So when we look at Abraham and we see here's a guy that is just totally magnanimous. He was so kind that the Medrash tells us that the attribute of kindness complained before God that he was out of a job. The attribute of kindness, right? The Jews will not replace us. Who said that, right? Abraham is replacing the attribute of kindness, right? Because he was the attribute of kindness. He had people coming into his tent, and he would make sure that these angels at the beginning of the portion would wash the dust of their feet before entering his tent. Why? I don't understand this, but Rashi says something about because they would worship the dust on their feet. That was their form of idolatry. So he wanted them not to bring idols into his home. Don't know why anybody would worship the dust on their feet. I don't know what that means, but that's what he did because he understood that he was hosting idolaters. Yet he was kind, magnanimous, and warmly welcoming them, right?
What made him think that they were idolaters?
Clearly he knew what he was talking about. He knew his customers. He obviously knew his customers. He understood where he was
I didn't
living.
know they were angels.
Oh, that's a good point. He didn't know that they were angels. I don't know. He probably assumed, of the aggregate of the people that dwelt in that area, they were idol worshippers, right? So why is Abraham, who's the man of kindness, suddenly switching gears to stand up with gevura, with discipline, with strictness, with defiance to God? Shouldn't the man of kindness suddenly just say, God, whatever you say,
You're the boss.
your wish is my command, you're the boss? That's what the man of kindness should do. The Rebbe points out that the word vayigash Avram vayimar is out of place. It doesn't belong in Abraham's lexicon. It doesn't belong in his toolbox. Yet from here, the Rebbe points out that Abraham actually switched his personality. He switched gears in order to stand up to his fellow Jews, to his fellow human beings. He stepped out of his natural disposition in order to do what needed to be done. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. How often does it happen that we say, Rabbi, I'm not comfortable with X, Y, Z. I'm not comfortable with laying tefillin. I'm not comfortable with giving this amount of charity. I'm not comfortable with tolerating that nudnik in the synagogue, right? Get your attention. But
for not using my name.
I'm trying to anonymize. In Yiddish we say, "Afaganav brenta hitzel." The hat burns on the head of the thief, right? Right. Self-incriminating. Anyway, so we tend to have this bias towards our personal comfort level, as if that is the ultimate decider of what we're going to do. It all depends on what I'm comfortable with. Yet here from the very first Jew, we learn that God created you in a certain default setting for you to be able to overcome that default and to reinvent yourself. That Tzemach Tzedek explains this is the difference between the human and the animal, where the animal is horizontal, and the human is vertical. The human, all humans are vertical. The overwhelming majority of animals are horizontal, where the brain and the heart and the liver, which is where the blood is, the passion, are all on the same level. In fact, the brain is a little lower than the heart, down, eating the grass, and the heart is above, because animals are controlled by impulse. Human beings have the head above the heart, because the human being controls his heart. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe was once asked about what is the entire purpose of Chassidus. What is the entire purpose of Chassidus? It's such a beautiful, beautiful answer, he said. Such a beautiful answer. He said, the whole purpose of Chassidus is 3 words. L'shanos teva midosav. To change the natural disposition of his character. Right? In other words, you were born selfish, narcissistic, tight-fisted, judgmental. Get over it. That's the purpose of Chassidus, to infuse our brains with Chabad, with idea, understanding, and feeling, with a godly awareness, that we will tell our heart who's boss, not the other way around. And this is the extraordinary lesson that we learn from Avraham. When Avraham has to stand up for humanity, and like you say, Harvey, he's the first humanitarian, yes. Abraham says that you've got to be able to find some redeeming quality. Remember what it says in the law, that when it comes to capital punishment cases, when the court, the Grand Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin of 71 elders would rule about someone being convicted to death, if there was not a single dissenting view, he could not be executed. What does that mean? The Rebbe explains. I mean, if he's guilty of sin, then why couldn't we execute him when there's not a single dissenting view that gives him benefit of the doubt? The reason is because if there was not even one of the judges that was able to see a redeeming factor, it means that they didn't dig deep enough. So this is where Abraham's coming from. And Abraham is searching high and low to be able to figure out a way to to defend his fellow human beings. And he's even willing to change his disposition, to go out of his comfort zone, to stand up for God. It was so interesting, at this wedding that I was at last week. My family is Chabad. My brother's family is Chabad. The bride's family is Gerer Hasidim, which is the big Streimels, right? Family from London, Israel. The Chassan himself is from the Lithuanian yeshivas, which is the non-Hasidic at all. So the yeshiva students, the friends of the groom, were all non-Hasidic. Some of my cousins that were there were like extreme left-wingers, Israeli left-wingers. People that were like, somebody didn't come, one of the cousins didn't come, because the husband of one of the cousins didn't come because there was a mechitza at the wedding. There was a division of men and women, and had he known how long the cocktail party would have been before, weddings don't start in Israel before like 8 p.m. By the way, the chuppah was called for like 7:30, 8 p.m. Beautiful rooftop out there in Tel Aviv. It was amazing. But long cocktail, like an hour and a half cocktail party. We didn't start the reception until like 10 p.m. But the dancing was amazing. The dancing was clean shaven, Chabad beards, the Hasidic Streimels, the Tel Avivi left wingers, the right wingers, the black yarmulke, the tiny Chatzi shekel yarmulke, the kippah sruga, the no yarmulke, all dancing together. It was beautiful. So we're walking across the street on Friday afternoon, just at sun setting on the Jerusalem Friday Shabbos. The place is just, you can sense the holiness. You can slice it with a knife as the golden sun is setting on the walls of Jaffa Gate. God willing, we'll have a tour to Israel soon. We're working on it. The Rebbe Tzachon is working on it. So as we're walking by, we're crossing the road out of our hotel to go to the old city. We see cars driving by. So there was a cousin, like other part of the family there, who was non-Hasidic. And he says, you see the people driving these cars? They're not Jews as far as I'm concerned. That's what he says. He says, they're not Jews as far as I'm concerned. I said, first of all, they're probably Gentiles. They're probably Gentiles. I said to them, they're probably Gentiles. Who do you think is driving on a Friday night in Jerusalem? Number one, they're probably Gentiles. Number two, even if they're Jews, they just don't know any better. How could you possibly write them off like that? They're not Jews in my book. They're fellow Jews. They're your brother and sister. They just don't know.
Love your fellow Jew.
They just don't know any better, right? So we got into this whole discussion. And what I did is that I shared with him, I said, if you think about Moses, what did Moses do? The very closing words of the Torah is that Moses, God is thanking Moses for having the courage to smash the tablets. These are the last words of the entire Torah. For having the courage to smash the tablets. Now, that's a very funny thing to do. Why did he smash the tablets? I mean, funny. It's an odd thing to do. For God to thank him for smashing the tablets. The tablets is God's crown gift to mankind, to Jewish people. The 10 Commandments. Why did Moses smash the tablets? Rashi says, because Moses didn't want that God should have a prosecuting argument against the Jewish people. When God gave them the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, and now they go into the sin of the golden calf, right? They're cheating on God with an idol, with an idolatry, right? So God had now an accusation to the Jewish people. So what does Moses do? He tears up the marriage contract. So when God comes to Moses and he says, why did they cheat on me? Moses says, where's your marriage contract? Right? So Moses is willing to smash the 10 Commandments, the tablets of stone, God's gift to mankind, in order to defend who? Who is he defending?
The Jewish people.
Not just the regular Jewish people.
The idolaters.
The idolaters, the deliberate idolaters who made a golden calf 7 weeks after
The Exodus.
40 days after they received the Torah on Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
I mean, they were cheating on their husband 40 days after the wedding. I mean, they're literally on the honeymoon still when they're cheating on God. These are the people that Moses is standing up for. In 1986, on Simchas Torah, when the Rebbe was teaching this teaching, the Rebbe was weeping as the Rebbe shared the story. And he says, here you see the mark of a true Rebbe. The mark of a true Jewish leader who's willing to throw himself under the bus in order to stand up for his people. Which people? Even the most sinful of his people. He takes the Torah about which it says Torah's Moshe. It's the Torah of Moshe. That's what it's called. He takes his Torah, the gift that he received from mankind. Can you imagine? Why would he do that? Couldn't he just say, like, you know what, God, enough of those people. Let's amputate that little that little, what's it called, like this bad apple, these bad apples, and let's, this is a great thing we have over here in the Ten Commandments. No, he lets it all go in order to defend his people. And the lesson that we have to learn, my friends, is that we learn from Abraham, we learn from Moses, that when it comes to standing up to your people, for your people, we cannot allow anything to stand in our way. They are our brothers and our sisters. We cannot have any tolerance for people speaking badly about our fellow Jews. And if this is true about the most sinful of Jews, the sinners of Sodom and Gomorrah, the sinners of the idol of the golden calf, how much more so when it comes to a fellow Jew who's in shul with you here? The guy who happened to Nebuch take your seat and he didn't realize, or he's talking too loudly, and maybe he did realize, and maybe he's talking too loudly, and maybe he's annoying you, maybe he's driving you bananas, and you're not happy about it. We need to adopt a zero tolerance policy for speaking badly, folks. Don't look at the camera. Try to look studious. We're taking a picture. So imagine if we adopted a zero tolerance policy to speaking badly about, to listening to something bad about a fellow Jew. There's today's Yom Yom. We learn that when evil speech is spoken, when Lashon Hara is said, it kills three people: the person who invented the story, the person who speaks the story, and the person who's listening to the story. Why would you want yourself to be spiritually executed by being the victim of slander of Lashon Hara? We need to stand up for our fellow Jews. Let's make sure that it starts right here. There's beautiful signs all over Israel. B'yachad nenatzeach. Together we will win. Together we win, because if we're divided, we have no hope. We've got to be able to stand united. And that happens where? It happens right here. When you say to someone, "What, you telling me something bad about another Jew? Do me a favor and spare me." Imagine you said that to someone. Imagine today at the cocktail hour, your happy hour, right? Somebody starts talking badly about a fellow Jew and you say, "I don't appreciate when people speak badly about my family." Just say those words, "about my family." And they're like, "Your family?" It's not your family, it's my neighbor. And you're like, "What do you mean? That's my family. Every single Jew is my brother and my sister." So can you imagine we took this approach? Now, we don't know what's going to happen in the election today, okay? Only God knows what's going to happen in the election. But let's make sure that we approach this election with fortitude and with faith, to know that everything is in the hands of Hashem. We're doing our best to keep it going. But whatever happens, let us not make the most terrible mistake of amputating a fellow Jew from our orbit, because Barcheinu Avinu Kulanu Echad, Kulanu Kechad, when we stand together, that's when God blesses us. Yes, Marchi, had a question? Comment?
Yeah. Wasn't there a connection between Moses and Abraham in the sense they both did this similar things? I mean,
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Precisely my point, my friend, is that both Abraham and Moses, yeah.
Sometimes if you don't amputate, it kills the whole body.
Give me an example of that.
You have gangrene in your leg, in your foot. You have to amputate, otherwise the gangrene will kill the body.
A fellow Jew is never gangrene.
Well, if it's going to destroy the Jewish people, Bernie Sanders,
He put medical metaphors, Rabbi.
a Stephen Miller, Chuck Schumer, and Shomar. Remember, he was a Shomar.
Whatever you like.
What's it going to help for you to speak badly about that person?
I'm not saying speak badly.
Why do we feel good about? Why do we feel good? That's the question. Why do we indulge these things? Why do we feel good?
Yeah, what does make you feel so good to kick him down?
No,
To
not-
kick him
not
out of
about
there.
these people, not even that, but about a fellow Jew in the synagogue who won't say, so won't look you in the eye and wish you a good job.
Folks, when you feel vibes from a fellow Jew, approach them, confront them, say hello, kill them with kindness. Let's make sure that we can stand strong right here in Palm Beach Gardens and around the world. Thank you very much.